Good evening. You're very welcome to this, the second webinar in the spring series from myself and my colleagues here in Teagasc, Sligo, Leitrim, Donegal. My name is Cian Condon. I'm a dry stock advisor based in Manorhamilton in County Leitrim, and I'll be your host here this evening. Tonight, the focus moves to preparation for lambing. And firstly, Dwayne Shiels of the Letterkenny office will go into some detail on the actual causes of mortality in lambs. And this will be followed by Tom Coll of the Mohill office, who'll be going into the essentials in maximising the number of live, healthy lambs on your farm this spring. Now, since we can't meet in our usual meetings, farm walk seminars, we're still hoping to keep things fairly interactive. And at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the question and answer function. And you can direct your comments and questions to the panel here right throughout this evening, and I'll put it to them then in a little bit of time coming into 9 o'clock. Without any further ado, I'm going to move and call on Dwayne to share his screen, please. Dwayne, if you want to go ahead.
So thanks very much, Cian. Good evening all. So Dwayne Shiels here. I'm Education Officer in Teagasc, Letterkenny, and I'm just going to talk to you about tonight on lamb mortality, so the causes and preventions. And I'm going to go through a bit of working on the PhD in Athenry. So we're looking at a post-mortem study, a 2-year post-mortem study. Where we're looking at the reasons, so the time of death and the reasons lambs died. And we're going to look at a bit of a survey done with the National Farm Survey. So I'm not going to focus too much on the preventions. Tom's going to talk a bit about that after. So I'll just go in and out through them. And I suppose we'll start with when does lamb mortality occur. So as most of you know, the majority of lamb mortality occurs in the first week of life for the neonatal period. So we're going to concentrate mainly on this here for the first couple of slides. So when does neonatal lamb mortality occur? We see that 51.6%, over half of neonatal mortality occurs at or before birth. So 0 hours we see there, and 21.5% within the first 24 hours. The remaining 26.8% died from day 2 to 7. And in other words, I suppose we see that over half the lambs were dead before they hit the ground at all, and 3/4 or over 75% of them in the first 24 hours. So this is where we need to concentrate most on. This is where our greatest gain is going to be. This is where the opportunity is to reduce lamb mortality. We know when the deaths occurred. We're just going to look then at what is the main causes. So accidents, we'll go around the wheel there. Accidents accounted for 8%. This is your ewes lying on lambs, your lambs with the gates falling them, lambs getting hung. These are inevitable. Most of these are going to occur. We can do our best to prevent them, but it's going to happen anyway. And your congenital defects, then this is your deformities. Again, hard to prevent these one, but the next two that we're talking about here, your dystopia and your infection. This is where our opportunities, our main opportunities, is to reduce our lamb mortality. So for dystopia, this is your difficult lambings, whether this be your big single lambs or your ewe to lamb ratio, so a smaller ewe having a big lamb. These are your dystopia cases. That's going to be mainly down to late pregnancy nutrition, keeping our adequate feeding to litter size and expected lamb date, both of what we'll talk about later. And I suppose we'll talk about lamb birth weight overall, but mainly over the 2-year study in Athenry, we found dystopia to the main cause. The second main cause. Infection then accounted for 38%. This is the main cause of lamb mortality in the 2-year study. Again, a cause is potentially preventable through better hygiene practices, better colostrum management. Again, that's something we're going to talk about after. So then other cases, this is your hypoxias or your lambs suffocating during birth, your hypothermia and starvations, and finally we've seen a large proportion of them where diagnosis could not be reached. These lambs we'll see in a second. These are stillbirth lambs that we couldn't give a specific cause death for. All these lambs are post-mortem along with regional veterinary labs, and these are just lambs that we couldn't give a specific cause or a definite cause of lamb mortality for these. So as I said, infection and dystopia are the main causes, and most of these causes up here are potentially preventable. So I mentioned there now when and what the lambs died of. We're seeing this here. So firstly, the mean neonatal mortality. So the mean mortality for the 2 years over the 3 flocks in Athenry was 9.3%, and this cause of mortality varied with age. So we can see in the left column here the cause of death, and then across the rest of them we can see here the time of death, so when they died. This varied with age, as I said. We'll use infection, the main cause of mortality. We'll use that as an example. We can see at 0 hours, so at or before birth, 45%. So 45% of the lambs that died due to infection died at or before birth. This included your abortions, your toxoplasmosis, your enzootic abortions, maybe cases where a yolk prolapsed and there's a dirty spoon put in, or a harness put on, a Coll or a bacteria got in there. Whenever this lamb came out, it was stillborn, it was dead, it was sent for post-mortem, and it was tested for a bacteria infection or Coll, and it came back positive. For day one, then you can see that there's a large drop in this. So if the lamb came out alive, it was very unlikely to die due to infection then day one. Whenever it rises again, here we see then at day 2 to 7. So from days 2 to 7, that's another 43% of these lambs died. Here we're looking at lambs where maybe hygiene practices weren't just on par, and then our colostrum usage. So this lamb at a day old or 2 days old, they've been taking in the infection then, and they're subsequently dying then from day 2 to 7. So I suppose it shows the two different types of infection, the toxo-enzo or the abortions, and then the afterwards. So it's worth noting also that we talked about the diagnosis not reached a second ago. You can see here that 70% of the lambs that we couldn't get a diagnosis for, 70% of these were stillbirth. So that was where a lamb was born alive or born dead, came out, looked perfectly fine, was sent for post-mortem, and we couldn't give a definite answer. So we'll all have them there stillbirth in it. So we mentioned there now, looked at the times and the cause. So I'm going to do a bit now on looking back again at the post-mortem study. I'll focus mainly on the infection and the Dystopia again. Quickly go through a few methods of reducing infections. But as I said, Tom's going to explain a lot more detail of this in the following presentation. So for the main part of this here, I'm going to concentrate on the results from the 2 studies in Athen Rye, the survey that was done with the National Farm Survey in 2019. This is where we've done a survey with sheep farmers across Ireland, 185 sheep farmers across Ireland, the representative of 88,000 of them, and we asked them questions, got them to explain on their management practices on their farm. We give them a risk assessment, then done a risk assessment, asked questions that carried a high and low risk for lamb mortality, and we explain them. So I'll go through a few parts of them, a few points not there. I'll start with a point on abortion, the abortion vaccinations. So as I seen a minute ago, 45% lambs that died due to infection were dead at or before birth. However, there's only 9% Irish sheep farmers vaccinating against toxoplasmosis and 4% against enzootic abortion. So either the two of these get into a flock and it can be detrimental. Anyone that's experienced it will know. So the advice we look in there is, or we'll be given there, is that where possible to keep a closed flock, or if you're buying and replacing, to be very careful about it. And if you have any suspect cases, so we're all going to have that abortion, maybe a hurt coming up to Lamin now, a week out, 2 weeks, 3 weeks out from Lamin. Any suspect case at all, send them for your local vet, will send them away for you for post-mortem. And if a problem's confirmed, then not to wait the first year or the second year that you're having 2 abortions, 5 abortions, and waiting for a big hit to go vaccinate. Go in, the points we're going with there, you have to be on before 40 days pre-tupping, and it's definitely economical if you're going to have a problem or you have a problem in your flock to start vaccinating for toxo-enzo. So we'll move then, vaccinating against either if you have them. We'll move then on to the main cause of infection. So we're going to speak on Lamin. So from the survey again, ewes were housed in 75% of the flocks, lowland flocks surveyed, and were housed, the majority of them, 85% of these were housed in straw. So while housed in slats, whether they're plastic slats, wire mesh slats, or wooden slats, it's important to keep them power washed and clean. I'm going to focus mainly on the straw now. So of the 75%, 85% of them are.
Dwayne, I'll just pop in there. It's Cian here. Just the slide that you have up on your screen at the moment. What slide is on your screen at the moment?
Reducing cases of infection.
It still is the 2 lambs. That's okay. Yeah. I just thought you might have moved on. Thank you very much. That's okay.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Thanks, Kate. So I'm just going to start off. It starts off with the ewes lambing down in this pen that Cian's chatted about in here, and the bed of straw. So it's vital important first to start with this clean pen. Start off to eliminate as much bacteria as possible. Whether that be take the ewes out a week before lambing, apply your hydrated lime or your disinfectant in the pen, and then go with a clean bed of straw. The reason in this is the ewe, whenever she lambs down, the first suck the lamb's going to get is off. It's going to be off them teats or off the wool. If them teats are dirty to start with, if she's in a dirty pen for the week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks up to lambing, the first mouthful this lamb's going to get is going to be the dung or the bacteria on them teats. So that's the start off is not the individual lamb pen being clean, but the group pen that ewes lambing down on being clean. So sorry. The next part then, I suppose, it just goes on to, it works out perfectly that you're an adequate time to apply the iodine. You're going from that group pen across to the individual pen. Few points on the iodine to be going with a strong 10% iodine with the option of adding methylated spirits or alcohol to it. You can get this from your vets, from your local chemist. The idea of the methylated spirits or the alcohol is that it'll dry the navel quick, prevent the bacteria getting in, prevent the infection getting in. And you have the two options, either to dip them or to spray the navels. With dipping navels being the preferred option, that the teat dip, the cup that the dairy farmers dip their cows' teats with, being the preferred option, that you can dip the full navel in, tilt it up and cover the base of the navel. So covering this part of the navel, covering the base in where the navel meets the stomach is the main important part to cover. If you choose to go with the spray bottles, which many of us do, like here, it's very important to spray one side, turn the navel, spray the other side, and getting plenty on, not just colouring the belly with a bit of iodine, that you're getting plenty on around the base of the navel there. So I'm just going to give a few points on the survey again and points that we found. So applying iodine at Lamin, we've seen that 12% of farmers who are lambing indoors aren't using any iodine, so they aren't applying iodine to any of the lambs, and 9% are only applying to some of the lambs. So while 80% of the farmers are doing good practice, they're applying iodine to their lambs post-lambing, and maybe the opportunity maybe there at the method. So whether you want to use dip, the teat dip cup, or you want to go with a stronger solution of iodine, maybe add methylated spirits or add your alcohol to it to dry it up. So if you're seeing that you're having a problem with infection, it's just a few other tips there to go with maybe a stronger iodine or to add the methylated spirits. So once we have the iodine on, we're going to the individual lambing pens. Again, this is ideally, these should be cleaned out and disinfected after each ewe. Another few points we've seen. So this is the Rolls Royce, or what we're ideally looking for is cleaning out and disinfecting each pen after each ewe. So clean your straw, disinfecting the pen with your hydrated lime or your Stalison tea or your disinfected spray, and then fresh bed of straw for the lamb. From the survey again, we're looking at 88% of farmers use these individual lamb pens. However, only 41%, and we see here at the bottom, only 41% are cleaning and disinfecting. The remainder of the farmers, 26% or a quarter of them, aren't cleaning or disinfecting, so they're not doing either. They're not cleaning or disinfecting. When one ewe vacates the pen, when one ewe comes out of it, another ewe goes straight into it. This bacteria, this infection is building up. Maybe she's cleaning that cleaning's breaking down it, and that there's building up infection. 20% are cleaning out the pens only, and 13% are only disinfecting them, so they're not cleaning them out, they're just going into the powder and putting one ewe on after the other. So I suppose that we're looking at that we know everyone's busy. It's a busy time of the year. Lambs everywhere. We don't have much time. We're up all night, not much sleep. But might be an opportunity this year with lockdown that there'll be people off work, there could be builders. It doesn't have to be someone with stockmanship or with experience of stock. Someone that you get in for a few hours in the morning, take the pressure off, and just to help this. And especially if you're seeing problem with infection or problem with lambs dying due to infection. So finally on the infection, I'll not dwell on too long. I said Tom's going to discuss this in much more detail next. We're going to look at colostrum usage. So we all know that IgG transfer or immunoglobulin transfer is very important for passive immunity in lambs, and the source of colostrum used is important for this. But as we said, Tom's going to go in a lot more detail on the colostrum. So 73, we see here 73% from the survey again, 73% of farmers assisted lambs to suck, and 68% used artificial colostrum. 10%, we see in red here, 10% of these farmers are using artificial colostrum as their only source. While we're not condoning that, or there's nothing wrong with artificial colostrum, it's we're trying to portray the message that it's the source of this alternative colostrum or this artificial colostrum. We want you to check, it's critical to check the IgG source, so the source of the immunoglobulins in it and the concentration, and that you're going for a colostrum substitute and not a colostrum supplement. So you're looking at the percentage of IgG in it and where this IgG is coming from. So it's a yolk-based colostrum that it's coming from. It's a yolk-based milk that it's coming from. We've seen then that 44% of farmers were stomach tubing their lambs. Again, Tom's going to speak about that in a minute, where it's a great hazard with infection to none if you're not managing your stomach tube correctly, if you're not sterilizing it. And We've seen in other sources then, while these add up to more than 100, these are all options. The farmers were given a box. They could tick which ones they used. These are the sources here, other sources. So frozen thawed cow colostrum, 44% of farmers. Frozen thawed sheep colostrum, 29% of farmers. And colostrum from other ewe, 44 again. So the colostrum from other ewe would be the ideal. You can take this and chill it, like if you have a ewe with a big single lamb or a ewe with a single lamb, plenty of milk, you milk a litre off her. It's gonna last for 24 to 36 hours. You put it in your fridge. But if your next best option is your frozen thawed sheep colostrum, again, do this in one of your first ewes to lamb milk, or take a sample out there and freeze it. Your ice cube bags or your small Tupperware containers of that. It's a great idea. You can fill your ice cube bags there, take a litre off it, put it into your ice cube bags, take 4 or 5 of them, then you just take what you need. Thaw them. They're very easy to thaw then when that's small, and if you need a thing for each lamb. Just a final note on artificial colostrum. If you are using it, that if you ewe lamb down with triplets, that you're going to milk her and she's enough milk for 2 lambs. You're not going to give all this milk to 2 lambs and give another lamb the artificial colostrum. That you're going to pull it, you're going to mix your artificial colostrum, milk the ewe into it, then make up your 250 ml, 300 ml each. Start that all lambs are getting colostrum from the ewe, and all lambs are getting artificial. It's not just one lamb. The one lamb's not getting any artificial or any colostrum from the ewe. So that's just a final point. But again, Tom's going to go into a lot more detail on that in a second. So the other main cause of lamb mortality we've seen in the Athenry study was Dystopia, and through any of the literature, through any of the studies worldwide, lamb birth weight's known to the main cause of lamb mortality, whether that be small, light birth weight lambs that die due to hypothermia and starvation, or as seen in the post-mortem study, the heavy Dystopia lambs. So we're just going to talk about a few methods of reducing this, options of reducing this. Number one is the rattle and rams. While many farmers are doing it to look at fertility of the ram and to make sure that rams are working, it's also a great opportunity to know the expected lambing date. And by knowing the expected lambing date, we can feed accordingly. And we can see that 60% of farmers are rattling the rams. However, whenever we go to changing the rattle colour, then 62% changing every 2 weeks, 17% every cycle, 8% every month, but only 4% at the bottom here change the rattle every week. It's more than likely you're going to catch the ram once a week anyway to update the colour or to apply more rattle. When doing that, it's good practice to change the colour. So going from we chat about weekly changing here, going from your light colours, your yellow, your orange, your green, your blue, going on to your darker colours then, and allows them for late pregnancy, groupings for feeding in late pregnancy. So that's as we spoke about there, that we seen John Cannon a few weeks ago spoke about late pregnancy nutrition, so we'll not dwell on that too much. But by changing this, it allows us to feed our 200 grams per lamb a soya in late pregnancy. However, we need to know the exact expected lambing date. There's no good feeding this to yolk carrying triplet lambs. No good feeding this additional 300 grams of soya. If the rattles change once a month, you'll be feeding it for 6 weeks. Soya is 500 a ton at the minute, so it's a very economical thing again. While it's welfare thing that you're saving lambs, it's also economic that you're feeding as well. But there's no point changing the rattle if we're not going to scan the ewes. And while scan is done in a lot of flocks across Ireland, we see that 69% of the farmers scan their sheep. There's no point scanning them. We're not going to use the information and group feed it or feed the sheep accordingly. So group them in late pregnancy, feed them accordingly. And again, feeding that adequate concentrates in late pregnancy, as John described, your 200 gram or your 100 grams per lamb carried of soya. And to look for that option or that optimal birth weight, you're looking for a target birth weight of 4.5 for your triplet lambs, 5.5 for your twins, 6 kilos for your singles. And again, this can be achieved if we know the expected lambing date and the expected litter size. So we're going to finish up then on a bit on recording lamb mortality. This bit's from a sheepnet project, seen it on a European sheepnet project that Tim Keady and Alan Bohan were doing there on a Euro sheep. So a simple thing I thought a great idea. From the survey, we found that only 30% of farmers were recording lamb deaths accurately, and when they didn't record lamb deaths, there's a tendency to underestimate it. So this is just a whiteboard in the corner of the shed, an A3 sheet put up with the cause of death down the left here, a space for ticks along the right, and it trains your eye then and makes us increase the awareness of the problems very quick, enables you to take action and solve these problems. table here, we can see that there's 4 lambs died due to joint ill, 5 to Scour, and 7 lambs to watery mouth there. So we see here that straight away, their problem with infection allows us to take action. We need to start using stronger iodine. We need to start increasing hygiene. We need to start working that there. If we hadn't done that, we'd be putting these lambs into our bag, or we all have them, our bag or our box in the corner. We're forgetting about them as soon as possible. So that's here on the wall. It soon trains the eye that there's a problem there. It allows you to fix it and start working it. And I suppose in the end, making more money on the farm. So I'll finish up with, like, if in Ireland, if we could reduce lamb mortality by 1% across all the flocks, so if each flock, if we could reduce lamb mortality by 1%, it'd be worth 3 million annually to the Irish sheep sector. So there's a massive opportunity there for each of us in these infections, dystopias, the difficult lambing, late pregnancy nutrition. There's an opportunity all to eat into that 3 million, I suppose, make more for each of our own farms. So I'll finish up with a few take-home messages for you. So the cause of mortality changed with age. The majority of these lamb losses occurred at or before birth. So we've seen that this was the greatest opportunity to reduce the lamb mortality was at or before birth in the first few days of life, with infection and dystopia being the main causes. And these causes of death are potentially preventable through good management practices, whether it be in late pregnancy nutrition to stop the lamb birth weights, the light and the heavy lambs, or through good hygiene management around lambing time, applying iodine, disinfecting lamb pens. Reducing lamb mortality results in both economic and welfare benefits for each farmer. So I'll finish up with that there. I'll welcome a few questions afterwards. I think Tom's going to speak first and both of us are present first. Both of us are going to answer the question then. So thanks very much, and I'll give you back to Cian.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Dwayne. That's great. Firstly, I'll ask you to stop sharing. Absolutely, that's perfect. Just we're going to move on to Tom Coll next. So while Tom is getting set up there, Tom, if you want to share your screen.
So I'm going to talk to you about Lamin essentials and you heard from. Yeah. So I'll just run through it, and I'm not going to get it up on full screen here, so I'll just run through it as it is. So talk about Lamin essentials, and when it comes to Lamin, I'm going to talk about H&C, and it's something that I suppose we learned from Dwayne's presentation there and his research, that hygiene and colostrum play a major role in lamb survival, especially in the first couple of days of its life. And then I'm going to move on then and talk a bit about health and safety around lambing time, which is a serious issue in farms, and we need to keep safe around lambing time. So the Lamin essentials, you can all talk about different Lamin essentials, and you'll see it in the media and the press and that, like, and if you go onto the internet, like you'll get a list of things that you actually need, like, to get you through lambing, and it could be anything from ropes, rubber rings, laminades, different concoctions. But I suppose the main two that we need to really concentrate on from Dwayne's talk there is hygiene and colostrum. And a lot of cases, if we get the two of these right, other things just fall into place. So if we look at hygiene, I'm going to talk to you a bit about biosecurity, your hands, the yo, herself, hygiene of the yo, hygiene of the newborn lamb. Dwayne already mentioned it, hygiene in lambing pens, and hygiene in the individual pens, and then the utensils that you're using, especially the stomach tube, like hygiene's critical there as well. And I suppose what's circled there in the middle, like the straw is the key, like, you know, at any lambing period on the farm, like, you know, plenty of straw. Make sure you have enough straw, and you don't have to go to the depth that the lamb's standing on, but you need to keep the lambing pens clean. So the biosecurity on the farm is critical, and it's critical that everybody has a disinfecting foot bath. Maybe this year, not like other years, like you mightn't have as many people coming on your farm due to COVID, but probably before the end of lambing, you may have the vet coming in or some of the neighbours coming into your farm, maybe lambing on their farm as well. Like, you know, so it's critical that you get them to dip their boots into the disinfectant, because there's various diseases out there, and Dwayne mentioned there enzootic abortion. It was critical that, you know, if the vet had been on a farm where there was a case of enzootic abortion and he was standing through the fluids, or if a neighbour has cases of enzootic abortion, he's standing on fluids, and then he's walking into your shed and potentially walking onto the straw in your shed where your lambs are, like, you know, there's a chance that could spread onto your farm, and it's the last thing you want, like, you know. So the key here is to ensure that everybody disinfects if they're coming onto your farm. And the same, like, you know, Dwayne mentioned, you know, help coming onto a farm as well. Like, you know, often help is coming from another farm that maybe has just finished lambing or is lambing themselves, like, you know, so again, ensure they disinfect as well. The next one is your hands. You know, your hands are a major source of infection, and we're all busy around lambing time, and hands do get dirty. And so there's a lot of, you know, bacteria on your hands, like, so it's important that they're kept well away from newborn lambs and from ewes as well, like, you know. So it's important that you actually wear gloves, and I suppose over this last 9-10 months, we've all got used to wearing face masks, so we can all change a habit of a lifetime and start wearing gloves, and that's critical around lambing time, and we'll mention a bit more about that later on. So the next one is the ewe, hygiene of the ewe, like, you know. So Dwayne mentioned there again about, you know, keeping lambing pens clean, keeping ewes clean, but, you know, if one of those ewes in the pen gets into difficulty around lambing time, you're going to jump in, you're going to catch the ewe, heel her over, and then you're going to put your hand in to try and get the lamb. So it's important that, you know, if you're going in there catching the ewe, you don't want to be putting that bare hand or even a hand with a glove in it straight into the ewe after catching her. So it's important maybe that you use the long sleeve disposable gloves, and don't have them on you when you get in to catch the ewe. Put them up your sleeve, or keep them in your pocket, and just use them then when you're ready to take that lamb from the ewe. And it's also important that you know, you use the right sort of lube as well, like, you know, and plenty of it, like, and don't be using things like fairy liquid or that, but they'll only dry the thing up, like, and so you want you know, those lubricants have disinfectant agents in them as well, like, you know, so they're important that you use them. And it's also important, like, you know, keep hygiene to its highest level around that time, and what that'll do is you'll actually reduce the need for antibiotics in those ewes. Like, so if a ewe just has a foot back or a head out, like, you know, and you can get the lamb out fairly quick out of her, like, you know, there's no need to be going in and treating that ewe with antibiotics then, because if you've been aware of hygiene standards around handling them. The next one then is the lamb itself. Like, so this, if you look at this particular lamb, he's just hit the ground, he's starting to get up, he's looking for his mother, and he's going to head straight for the teat and hopefully find it, like, but in the meantime, before he gets to her, like, he'll probably spend a lot of time licking at the side of her, like, you know, so that's the source of infection. The infection's going to get into that lamb in two ways, either, as Dwayne said, like, in through his mouth or in through his navel, like, so Dwayne already covered, you know, immediately as soon as he hits the ground, get in and spray that navel and treat it, whether it's chlorhexidine or iodine, like, either work well, and try and keep your ewes as clean as possible, and keep the teats clean, like, so whatever he ingests through his mouth is going to be bacteria free. The other thing, like, and I mentioned there about you know, going in with our hands, like, you know, often you're going in and there's a difficult lambing, you may be putting a rope or something around that lamb's head and then through his mouth, like, you know, that rope should be clean as well, but you could possibility introduce an infection there as well. And I suppose the other one, with, you know, if you're helping that lamb to actually suckle the ewe, chances are you're going to put your hand in his mouth to open his mouth to put it in the teat, like, you know, so your hands should be clean there as well, that you're not introducing an infection at that stage as well, like. Dwayne mentioned it too about the Lamin pens, like, you know, and Lamin pens should be kept clean, plenty of straw. That's the only way you're going to keep that dirt from getting on the fleece and getting on the teats. And then normally when lambs leave the Lamin pens, a lot of farmers, you know, maybe due to poor weather and that, they'll keep them in group pens along with their mothers for a couple of days. And it's important, like, that you keep that area really clean with straw as well. Like, you know, it's an area we all tend to forget. Like, you keep the individual pens nice and clean and you disinfect them, like, where the lamb's actually dropping down or where the lambs spend time after it's born, like, you know, it doesn't want to be coming in contact with feces or dirt or bacteria. So it's important that you keep that area clean as well, like, because more often than not, like, you know, if you think I'm going to let these ewes out in the morning, so I'll not bother bedding the pen, that's where you know, you get incidents of mastitis then when the sheep go out to the field because the lamb has maybe picked it up and he's spreading it on the ewe's teat or she's getting it from the dirty bedding herself, like. So then we look at individual Lamin pens, and Dwayne said there, like, you know, individual Lamin pens should be in a Lamin individual area as well. Like, you know, they shouldn't be really put on the group Lamin area. I know some farmers do that, like to put them in the group area. And the problem then is then you can't clean them out, like, you know, and if you've 4 or 5 ewes being penned in a group area and just straw piled on top of straw, like, you probably end up with 4 or 5 placentas in there, cleanings in there as well, and that's a prime source of infection. And the other thing then with individual Lamin pens is you want to keep that area as dry as possible, as you possibly can, like, you know. So you have hay racks there, and probably a hay rack means put hay in it, like, you know, if you put wet silage into it, like, that whole area is going to be very damp. And again, like, you know, that where you have damp, wet, warm conditions, like, that's where bacteria will flourish, and the lambs will pick it up, and, you know, you'll get incidents of watery mouth and scours as well there, like, you know. So put hay in hay rack and keep the whole area dry. Maybe leaving buckets in there with ewes as well, maybe not a good thing, like, where they knock them over and you have wet conditions there, like, you know. The next one is the utensils that you use, like, and especially the stomach tube, like, that's a utensil that you need to keep clean all the time. And after
Yeah. Just while we're waiting, hopefully Tom will come back online. There's a question there, Dwayne, about early causes of scour. So the causes of scour kind of in the first 24 hours or so, as opposed to after a few days on. Do you want to just comment on what the issue might be there?
Well, listen, I suppose your most common one's your mouth scar, which you don't need to worry much about, that orange scar. Then as if it's a more watery scar, that liquid scar that you see sticking to the back legs there, that's where you have a problem, whether it be your E. coli or your bacteria getting in there. From the same, going back to that survey that we done there, there's 10% of farmers blanket treating with spectrum, so we wouldn't just advise that, but maybe triplet lambs, or if you seem to have a problem with that, maybe first sort the infection part out first, sort where the bacteria is coming from first, increase your hygiene, start liming these pens, and down this disinfectant and spraying the nails, and then again the colostrum, making sure you're getting good quality colostrum into them early to prevent these scars. But I suppose the most common with the mouth scar, not much to worry about. It's this watery scar that you need to worry about. This one you see sticking to the inside of their legs and sticking this wet yellowy scar that's sticking to their legs there, and that's the one that we need to act on. You contact the vet there, you'll get primodoxin, or you get antibiotics there for it, or your spectrum scar halt too. But I suppose rather than short term treat the problem, but prevention is better than cure. Then if we could work on our disinfectant and our hygiene practices instead. Would it be recommended that an outdoor lambing flock be vaccinated for enzootic abortion? So we wouldn't recommend anyone to be vaccinating against enzootic abortion unless you're a problem. So the recommendation would be to first get a post-mortem done. If you have abortions, your 1-2% is going to be common across every flock, so your herds and that. It's whenever you start going into your 5 and 10% that you need to start worrying about it. If you have any case of abortion, to send them off to your local vet, send them to the regional veterinary labs, they'll do a PCR there, they'll do a test for abortion. And it's once you have a problem, it's the only time we recommend to vaccinate against it, but we wouldn't recommend to vaccinate against enzootic or toxo unless you have a problem in the farm. What's the thoughts on bringing in foster ewes from different farms or flocks? Again, unless you know where it's coming from and know the story behind it, we see a lot of these foster ewes for sale this time of year, and it might be land price are good and that, and it might be appealing to buy these foster ewes, but a lot of these cases can be abortions or ewes that you can be taking in a lot of trouble from that. And as we said earlier on the enzootic and the toxo abortions, that keeping a closed flock was the best practice. And around lambing time, it's very risky business to bring in a foster ewe unless you know the full story from it, unless it's someone you can trust and someone you know the full story. But the recommendation would be definitely not to bring them in, if at all possible, not to bring them in. We keep considering when we're waiting there, Cian, for bedding lambing pens with wood chip by a higher source of infection. Again, seen it in New Zealand a few years ago, bedding wood chip perfectly fine if the beds are kept dry. Plenty of disinfectant down, plenty of hydrated lime down under it. They were using a coarse wood chip there. It was a wood peel more, the outside barking more than anything. And as long as kept dry, plenty of disinfectant down, plenty of white lime down, it worked perfectly fine. There's talk this new scheme that's coming out now. The straw is going to be very scarce in the next year or two, and commodity is going to get expensive. So it's going to be, maybe we're going to have to look at other options for individual lambing pens. So we see the bottom question here: how important to get adequate colostrum into the lamb within the first hour, and how much per kilo live weight to give? So it's the quality and the quantity we're looking at. I suppose we're looking at 50 ml per kilo. So if you're a 5 kilo lamb, you're looking to get 250 ml in the first hour, and you're looking to get that in 4 feeds in the first 24 hours. So for your 5 kilo twin lamb, you're looking to get a litre of colostrum into it in the first 24 hours, 250 ml feeds, and the sooner the better. So within an hour, they talk about the first feed, one feed within 1 hour. So if the lamb hasn't got up within an hour or as close to that as possible, we're looking to get a feed into it that quick. So as I say, 50 ml per kilo. It's good practice to weigh a few lambs to start lambing or early on lambing, train your eye to it. And if the lamb isn't sucking, you're giving adequate colostrum to them then. And the source then, we're looking at, I say, the quality. You get these refractometers there, they're not that dear on eBay, 20, 30 euro. A lot of the dairy lads have it there for looking colostrum and looking at milk quality. You get special ones, the sheep one, it's the scale on it's a lot higher, you need to go. But as for quality colostrum, ewes, we done it there in Athenry a few years ago. Any ewe getting a good quality ration, the colostrum quality should be all right, and it's getting enough of it in. Colostrum management again. If you're having enough colostrum, should you mix with artificial and give both lamb or all three, a mix of both? As I said in the first presentation, definitely if you're going to use this, if you're going to use the artificial colostrum, that you're mixing it across, that you're not feeding 2 lambs with the ewe's own colostrum and then going with your artificial then to the other lamb, that you're mixing your 300 ml, your 500 ml artificial colostrum in a sachet, milking the ewe out, mixing it and giving the lambs, all 3 lambs, an equal amount of artificial and the ewe. The ewe's colostrum needed for the antibodies in the farm and to the diseases on the ewe's on your own farm. She's built up immunity to them, so it's definitely best practice to, even if the ewe only is a very small amount, and if she has no colostrum, then maybe you take some colostrum off a ewe that's lambed recently and with a single or twin another pen there. So we see that another question there on the various types of colostrum. So we've spoke about the artificial colostrum there, the ewe's own colostrum. Didn't mention too much on the frozen thawed ewe colostrum or the frozen thawed cow's colostrum. just other good practice there with the frozen thawed cow's colostrum is if you're a dairy farmer, local one, you know you're going to get your colostrum off them. You're worried that you might have a bit of problem and you want to get some frozen. When you're vaccinating your ewes 6 weeks prior to lambing, that you go and pick a few cows that the dairy farmer is due a week or two before your lambing, and you're vaccinating. You're then building the immunity. You're getting the cows on, whether it be your Hepvac P or your Covaxin 8, your Covaxin 10, that you're getting these cows vaccinated, getting their antibodies into the milk, and then the lambs getting them antibodies from that colostrum, and they're resistant to, or they're building up immunity to the same things as the rest of them on your farm. So that's what I think. I wonder is that on qualities then on what preferred. Obviously, the ewes own colostrums #1 or gold standard, followed as was by what you'd be taking from a ewe on the pen next door or another ewe on your farm there. As we said earlier about milking ewes fresh and storing this here, refrigerating this, if you have a small fridge in the shed or a fridge in the farm, that'll keep in the fridge just like your own milk that you drink there, own cow's milk. You can store this milk, a big single ewe there, a ewe single with lots of milk, take a litre off her, store that, you can use that then. That's the ideal, the gold standard, followed by the sheep colostrum, then the cow's frozen thawed sheep colostrum, frozen thawed cow's colostrum, and I suppose the artificial colostrum after that. And as long as it's very important then to check that artificial colostrum that you're working off, artificial colostrum with a ewe-based IgG. It's made from ewe colostrum, actually ewe carrying ewe antibodies, and not alternatives, your vegetable source or your egg source ones. So I suppose that's another one to look at. Sorry about this for a few things. Another question: what's the cause of high rate of mastitis when ewes are put out of the shed? And so there's two different types of mastitis. Different cause again. Some of this here is picked up in your group pens that we spoke about. A lot of people are lambing, putting them into individual lambing pens, then out to a group pen. If this group pen isn't clean, just like the individual lambing pens, your lamb's going about, it's taking dirt. The ewes lie in this in the dirty group pen before it's put outside. That bacteria is getting up into the udder. Hope that the teat, once the seal's broken, the teat and the lamb sucking, that bacteria is actually up there. If especially maybe you're wearing a single lamb, the lamb's only sucking one side, that bacteria gets to develop in there, and next thing the onset of mastitis. There's also maybe the cold weather, an onset of mastitis too in it. So let's see here. We said then on the best way Tom just didn't get onto it there, on the best way to sterilize the utensils, or I was going to speak about the stomach tubes there and clean clothes and that. We see that there's a presentation there if you just want to look it up there that was done. Michael Gostin done it last year on a pre-lambing, getting ready for lambing and washing. He had a 3-bucket rule where lambs or utensils for your stomach tube, your syringes used for it, your lambing ropes, that is put in first to warm soapy water, then warm clean water, and then it was with no soap in it or no suds in it, and then put in your milking and stored in your milking. So whether that be a lunchbox and that you're having a small lunchbox there, having a bit of your milking or a bit of sterilizing stuff, that you're storing your utensils, storing your stomach tube, your syringe there, keeping that there, and them small lunchbox, some of them a clip on it there, or maybe a jug there, a little jug that you can take about from pen to pen, that you can keep this here. When you stomach tube one lamb, that you can dip it in it, leave it in it while you're lifting up the other lamb, getting another lamb position, that you're not dropping that stomach tube and the syringe on the ground and letting, again, getting bacteria on it. You go into the next lamb, you're passing that bacteria straight down into the lamb. I see that just another question here on after cleaning out individual lamb pens, is it advisable to leave them to dry out before disinfecting the bed and next year provided or not if you're not under pressure? Ideally, if you clean them out, and an ideal word with lots of time we'd be power washing too, but I mean we're washing, but the recommendation is this, that we're keeping water out of it. We're not going to time for it to dry again. We're going to try and keep water out, keep them as dry as possible, keep bacteria down. So if you clean out the lamb pen, let it dry, and then go with your white lime or with your hydrated lime, your disinfectant would be the ideal, and then to go in with your bed or your pen. So it says another question on here on hypothermic lambs. So your glucose injection, our general rule of thumb is to go for your belly button and go down, length your index finger to one side of it there. Heat up the lamb first, whether it be in your lamb heat box or you're under your red light. Get the lamb heated up, the glucose injection into the cavity or into the abdominal cavity if possible. If you have glucose there, and getting colostrum into these lambs is also important. We can see here a question then about the 60 ml stomach tubes. Is there any other options? So again, if Tom gets back on here, we'll see that he has an option of this online there. You can buy 250 ml stomach tubes. Great job that you're not sucking stuff out of sucking and filling. You're letting down every time you disconnect that stomach tube, you're tend to let the end of the stomach tube down the ground. Again, you lift it up and you're putting bacteria down in the stomach tube. So these 250 ml ones, most labs are taking 250, 300 ml. You can fill the one syringe connected to the stomach tube, and again, that's another way of eliminating this. Bacteria into it. So we also went here, what's the best type of lime to use in lamb pens? So I think if we use enough of it, either of them, your ordinary agrical lime, your rhino hydrated lime, any of them, what works best for you as long as you put enough of it down and are bedding the lamb pens after it. There's also a Stolson tea powder that we use now for a while. It's an orange powder, and it also works as it takes the water, it evaporates the moisture, it soaks up the moisture, so it gives you a dry lamb pen. Another question here: experience in using Panatec Protect as a substitute for Scour Halt. Personally, I don't have any. Scour Halt, I wouldn't be recommending using it across all lambs anyway, unless you have a problem with it. Some people are using it as just a blanket treating everything, and then there's maybe no call for it. Maybe if you had a set of triplet lambs and you'll not much colostrum. I think if we get the hygiene right and the colostrum quality and quantity into them, enough colostrum into them, there should be no call for the Scour Halt or the Panatec Protect. There's other options. There's other probiotic pumps there and things advertised. But as I say, if you have the colostrum right and get enough of it into them, your hygiene's good, there should be no call for the Scour Halt. But unless you have your water mouth or your Scour problem, then it's an option to treat triplet lambs or maybe lambs that have got a bad start. You hasn't much milk, but again, we don't recommend to give it to all lambs, even though, as I said in the survey, 10% of farmers were treating all lambs with it.
Yeah, Dwayne, sorry, I'm back online here, but no matter.
Sorry, yeah, Keane.
Yeah, no, I'm just, when you back on, myself and Tom, we no matter what avenue we tried, we couldn't get Tom back on through the system. It was obviously an error on our end because it appears that we didn't lose any participants, but the three of us disappeared off screen. We managed to get back on pretty quickly, but Tom was unable to get back in. So we are heading for 9 o'clock, maybe just one or two. There's a question at the very bottom there, and it's partially down to what you have just said, but it's again that routine, every lamb gets a shot of Scour Halt down the throat.
Yeah.
Just you might comment on that.
So I suppose the reason we're not recommended is that we're building up antimicrobial resistance to it, and if you keep using this, if you're doing routinely to every lamb every year, your Scour Halt's not going to work in a few years' time. It's going to break down. It's not going to work in the bacteria then. It's not going to work whenever you do need it for your triplet lambs or your few lambs. So if you're blanket treatment to lambs that don't need it, it's like any antibiotics we're using. So your AMRs becoming a big problem worldwide with all antibiotics, and the continued use of the blanket use of it or misuse of it, same as your wormers, same as your ester antibiotics. When needed, then it's not going to work. Your bacteria is going to be resistant in your farm, and it's not going to work. So only use it when need to be used on your maybe triplets or on some lambs, weaker lambs, but not a lamb, single or twin lamb. You'll plenty of colostrum. There's no need to use it.
And just maybe we're after 9 o'clock now. So just finally, I think it's probably useful to emphasize. I know when we'd be discussing about the amount of colostrum you should be giving to a newborn lamb, is that people are very surprised at the amount. And there's a query there, just how much colostrum. Again, I just think it's worth re-emphasizing. How much should a 5 kilo lamb get in a single feed. Now, it's per day, so certainly in the first 24 hours.
Yeah, so the general rule of thumb is you're 50 mil per kilo. So your 5 kilo lamb getting 250 mil per feed. So you're working off 250 mil, 4 feeds in the first 24 hours. So you want to get a litre into that 5 kilo lamb. So again, if it steps up to 6 kilo lamb, you're going with 300 mil in one feed, a 4 kilo lamb, 200 mil in one feed. So 50 mil, as we said, good practice to start weighing lambs and train your eye to it. Once your eye trained to it, maybe every year lambing, weighing a few of them, but once your eye's trained to it, go into your 50 mil per kilo. So you're 250 mil for your 5 kilo lamb. Feed and getting in 4 feeds in the first 24 hours. So a litre into that 5 kilo lamb in the first 24 hours.
And as you mentioned there, worthwhile investing in rather than your small little 60 mil syringes is to do a bit of research, do a bit of tracking maybe on the internet, and to get a hold of something that'll hold the 250 in a single shot.
Definitely, if we got to see Tom's presentation finished there, he had pictures of they're available there on eBay or online there. They're 250 or 300 mil syringes there, same design as the other one. And whenever you suck out your jug, take your 300 mil out of your jug. You're only filling it once. You're keeping everything sterile. Once your tube goes down the lamb, it's connected to the end of the syringe. The one shot does you're not dropping the end of the tube every time down the pen when you're refilling the 60 mil syringe. So it's definitely a good idea and a worthwhile. They're not too expensive and a worthwhile investment.
That's great. That's brilliant. I think we're just after 9. We are well over the hour now. I understand I'd like to apologise for the technical glitches. It certainly appeared to be on this end, and we had some kind of an interruption in our network over the course of it, and unfortunately we didn't get Tom back in. But certainly I think Dwayne has handled things very well there in Tom's absence. So that's more or less it for this evening. I think there was a lot of practical information given out there. I hope you found some of it useful and that you make a note of some of it there. Certainly to make a hold and to use the points that are relevant to you and to your farm. All of these webinars are made available usually within about 48 hours. So if you have a look on our YouTube channel here over the next day or so, you'll be able to view this full webinar back. Next webinar is on grassland management and soil fertility planning. And just before we finish up, I'd like to just mention that again, the virtual Hill Sheep conference takes place on Wednesday and Thursday this week. You can find full details on the Teagasc social media platforms. And also then, which I mentioned earlier on, this is the last date, February the 15th, for submitting your sheep census online. As for the rest of our series, you can find full details by following us, Teagasc SLD, Sligo Leitrim Donegal, on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. That's it for this evening. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe and good night.
Thanks very much, folks. Thanks, Cian. Chat here.